An episode so frustrating that I had to record it twice. Alright, so, real talk, okay? Before I say anything else, because this is something I was meaning to say before, before I say anything else about this, you know, this super popular episode, what do you guys think of this episode? Go ahead and comment below. Let me know. Just before I say anything, because I do not want my opinion to taint yours. And the fact that I'm even saying that I don't want my opinion to taint yours should probably say everything it needs to about what I think of this episode, about this 6-part thing. I think the first thing I want to start with, just right off the bat, is this could have easily been shrunken down to 5, maybe even 4 episodes. Now, to be fair, you do need at least 4 episodes for this thing. And I mean that sincerely. That part I will stand behind. You need at least 4 episodes for this thing. Hey, there was no way you were gonna cram this into 3 episodes, or into, like, say, 2 episodes or 3 episodes. 4 is pushing it as it is. So maybe that's why I say maybe 5. That's why I kind of acquiesce to 5, right? But and this is the kicker right here, okay? Here's the but, right? I do still think there's a lot of fluff here. But I've had an entire night to stew on this, okay? An entire terrible 4 hours at work. That's not. You know what's funny? That you might think, oh God, you're gonna let a bad shift at work lower your opinion of this episode. Actually, the more I stew on it, in fact, I'm going to do so live as soon as I figure out where I put my pen. No, that's not my pen. That's that shitty pen. Where's my pen? Oh, I don't want to use the shitty pen though. Ah, fuck it. Okay, fine. We'll use the shitty pen. In fact, after I stewed on it, I know you can barely see that right there. That is me having scribbled out the D that I originally gave this episode, the D ranking I originally gave this episode, and I shifted it over to being a. I don't know how well that's going to show up, so I might edit that out. That was me scribbling out the D and writing a C. Because yes, this episode did go up an entire grade after I sat and I stewed on it. It's right here. But that is actually something to talk about with this one. I needed to stew on this one. And that happens sometimes, right? Sometimes at work, I need to stew on a work before I can really, either fully embrace it or even, realize, oh, wait, it's starting to come apart at seams. Personally, I prefer works that they get better when I start thinking about them, right? When I start thinking about them after I'm done, I have my emotional reaction and then I start stewing on them, they get better in my estimation. Once my mind starts, kind of going over everything, processing everything, right? And that was actually the 6-parter for me. Which is funny because I've also had the exact opposite reaction. The Rolo twist, the Karja slash Rolo twist in East 10, for example. I won't say anything more because I don't want to spoil, but that whole Karja Rolo thing, hey, right? That actually made a large degree of sense to me. Why I was sorry, I'm saying this wrong. It made sense to me why I was I focused so negatively on it because I stewed on it for an entire night, and then I came back and I was like, okay, yeah, no, fuck that twist, right? This was the exact opposite. I actually actively was like, okay, I've I've slept on it. My emotional reaction has been put to bed. Intellectually thinking about it, I will admit, while I still do not praise this episode with every single fiber of my being, and I still stand behind the fact I was even saying this yesterday right after I had said it, and in the now defunct version of the video that I rushed through, hence why I'm re-recording this, by the way. Hey, so what you're getting is the non-rushed version. I'm actually going to take my time with this. So if this ends up being over an hour long, well, there you go. That's why I actually sat there and because it felt like I rushed through everything. I haven't rewatched the video, but the original version was only like 40 minutes. So, you know, I'm hoping that this one's going to be longer because that means I will have rushed through it a lot less. And the fact that I have spent 7 minutes just kind of doing my preamble here kind of says everything it needs to. Also, fun fact, that letter upgrade thing, my decision to create the letter upgrade was right when I was like, okay, yeah, no, hang on, let me jot it down. Because as I started talking about it and just kind of positing the question, I kept thinking, okay, yeah. In fact, to be honest with you, I actually need to adjust the points now. Oh, because there's one other one that I think I want to say was better subbed. Hang on. Let me double check. No, I don't want to say that entire thing was better in the sub. I don't want to say that one entire thing. But I will say that one is better. So there you go. So that is part 4. So there we go. Oh, so there you go. 1, 4, and 6 are better subbed, and the rest are neither. No, the dub didn't get any points this week. No, 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 no. An episode that I'd be considering rant view status in the dub. Hub. Getting points for the dub. Yeah, sure. I'm actually not even joking when I say that. Although Seto is no better in the sub, I'll say that. That's actually one of the main reasons why the sub only got 3 points. Because I'll go ahead and explain it. I'll go ahead and explain it. Atem is the reason for part 1. Straight up, Atem is the reason. Because he's basically looking at Kaiba, looking at Seto and going, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" As I've been saying since Back to Battle City. Hitty. Uh, the Hitty. Especially his point of losing is not the end. Losing is not game over. That's actually what I was ranting at Face Off for. All the way back in season 1. Defeat is not game over in this case. It never was. Because you had the super hot chick that Joey's been trying to save that tried to save in the last 4-parter. Herder, and that he fucking came to death. He ended up on death's door because of trying to save her. Save her. She had star chips for you at that point, you know. In other words, it's fake drama, in my opinion. Again, because it's an arc, it's string continuity, which, in my opinion, the rules are different from, say, an episodic Star Trek episode. So, for example, are you really going to bitch out the fact that the Borg are suddenly interested in assimilating humans in Best of Both Worlds? Like, even if Riker didn't say the clearly their priorities have changed line, would you have cared? No, because Best of Both Worlds is a really good episode, and you wouldn't really you would not care, right? My problem with Face Off was that it was just ignoring the rest of continuity, because Star Trek doesn't actually care that much about its continuity. Not really. Really. I mean, it kind of does, but it kind of doesn't at the same time. Especially Legacy Trek. Didn't really care about its continuity all that much. Yes, they wanted to maintain a degree of continuity to make the setting make sense and to keep it entertaining, but they didn't care that much about continuity, you know? There was no point where we suddenly had, Picard and Dr. Crusher, hook up, even though they really should have, and thus they were kind of, they weren't beholden to all that crap, which then led to Picard having love interests in the movies, which was dumb. I am so glad 3 of the movies pushed back hard on that. Like, literally, excuse me, literally the only one Star Trek movie where Picard had an actual romance of the week was Insurrection. Think about that, because he didn't have anybody. He didn't have anybody in generation. He had no love interest in Generations. First Contact was, you might think, Lily, but no, Lily was the one screaming at him to quit being an asshole. That's literally what Lily's role was in First Contact. If you go back and you look at it, that it was to basically bitch him out, and rightly so, because Picard was acting like a dick in that movie. I'm not trying to say that that was a bad move. No, that was exactly correct. And then in Nemesis, it was, well, let's all be fucking. Let's have the writing be so stupid that it's one of those shittiest Star Trek movies ever made. My pick for the shittiest. Give me the slow motion picture that has some interesting concepts over the movie where Troy gets raped. Raped any day of the week. Oh, and by the way, that's not me being allegorical like it would have been if I had brought it up with Mai during Mind Game. No, I mean like literal, because she's a telepath. The way she was violated, yeah, just ugh. Thankfully, no rape in this one, unless you count my brain cells every time we flash back. Every time the Joey dream sequence shows up, which fun fact, I actually was wrong about something, because I always mentally thought of it as half of these 6 episodes, its runtime, was eaten up by the dream sequence. Actually, what's funny is it's only like half an episode. Half of part 5 specifically is eaten up by that stupid dream sequence, which doesn't even follow the rules that we're currently in the middle of, because it's a memory of the pre-battle of a tournament that took place pre-Battle City. I would argue that's kind of irritating, because whatever. But I still stand behind my statement, by the way. Yes, I know this is meant to be like it's a regional thing, but you know what? No, I don't care. Here, Duelist Kingdom should have counted. Again, if it was just some random schmo, if it was Mr. Excess Cash ish uh, from the Dragon Ball Z movie BoJack Unbound. I haven't actually seen that movie by myself. Actually, by the way, fun fact: it is the one DBZ movie I haven't actually seen. Fun fact: I've seen all of the other ones, every single one except for BoJack Unbound. How's that for weird? Weird. But anyways, if it was Mr. Excess Cash that had held the Duel Monsters tournament, I wouldn't say shit. And I'd be like, okay, yeah, that actually makes a degree of sense. And I'd be saying the same thing as Deshinta. But of course, because I'm not sucking Seto's cock, because fuck him, he has never been worthy of me going gay. Hey, I'm not willing to say that he didn't fix those fucking results. And the reason why I'm so adamant about the fact that yes, he did change them is twofold. One, Seto personally handpicked the duelists. Two, who? Pegasus, the creator of the fucking game. The man who, if he didn't go to fucking Egypt, you wouldn't have your fucking guard game. Him held the tournament. That would be like if Kazuki Takahashi held a tournament and the world circuit basically said, "Oh, that doesn't qualify you a spot. Being in the top 4 doesn't qualify you a spot at Worlds." That's dumb. And frankly, would be bad publicity on Konami's part. Let's just be real. Granted, this is Konami we're talking about, so bad publicity is usually pretty par for the course, but you get my point, right? Like, imagine for a moment, Kazuki Takahashi. I'm actually gonna do that. I'm actually gonna go here because Kaiba actually brought this up in the frickin' dub, so I'm actually gonna rant about this. So forgive me for the divergence. I said I wanted this one to be longer, so I didn't rush through all the plot points. Here we go. Because I didn't even talk about this in the other version. Imagine for a moment that while he was still alive, Kazuki Takahashi she hosted a Duel Monsters tournament. A Yu-Gi-Oh tournament. So Kazuki Takahashi comes in and he says, "Do you honestly think that it's somebody who is who registers for that tournament and it's a big tournament and somebody who gets into the papers, imagine somebody the top 4 duelists have a photo op with Kazuki Takahashi, and everything, and maybe even have Kazuki Takahashi recommend that they try out for Worlds. It would be in bad taste, my opinion, if Konami then turned around, like Kaiba does to Joey, and say, "No, you don't qualify." Oh, that the tournament held by the creator of the entire franchise? Yeah, that doesn't mean anything. I mean, go fuck yourself. Now you might think, well, that's a little weird, Blue Wolf. That's like saying that a Nintendo World Championship it should have a guy who qualified from a tournament that Shigeru Miyamoto held or something. But here's the thing: flip the script. Flip the script. For a second. Now imagine Konami not only says all 4 of those people qualify for Worlds just instantaneously, but are like honored guests. So no matter what their standing is in the world, in the world, in the world championships, they are, for all intents and purposes, honored guests. Yes, right. It's maybe even have like a maybe have like a special thing where they can opt in or they can opt out, that kind of thing, right? some kind of recognition on the world stage. Because these were people that were handpicked by Kazuki Takahashi, she himself, the creator of the game. Now, would that be a publicity nightmare? Yes. Yes, but at the same time, it's like, I could actually see, a couple of, ones. Heck, you could even make it so that if you're worried about the whole, oh, they'll just be moved up the bracket, all willy nilly, have it be that specific players from specific regions, like say, one player from each corner of the world moves up, just immediately moves up, immediately moves up. So, for example, let's say there's, the top player in Brazil, the top player in the United States, it's the top player in Japan, you know, that kind of thing. Hey, pick four specific countries, entries, the top player from each of those that qualifies for Worlds moves up moves up to the second round just immediately because their performance was good enough to move them up. You don't move up you don't move up the four from the hypothetical Takahashi tournament automatically. You move up the best players from the rest of the world because, well, you're good enough. You made it to the world stage. Congratulations. We're going to move you to the second round immediately because of a special, because this is a special, version of the world tournament, right? Because then that flips the script too with the whole world tournament thing. Because then you're not giving the participants of the Takahashi tournament special treatment. You're giving the actual players who worked hard to get to worlds special treatment. Because again, the Takahashi tournament only guaranteed them a slot, not that they would advance, because that's the side of the coin. And again, this goes back to exactly what I said all the way back at the beginning of season 2. During Stalked by Rare Hunters, that was it, yeah. During Stalked by Rare Hunters, I mentioned that the best thing that Seto could have done for Jinochi, that Kaiba could have done for Joey, would be to let him in. No, seriously, just let him in. Now you're probably like, okay, and I would imagine the reaction to that would have been simply let him in. It's like, well, but then you could turn around and say, well, wouldn't that wouldn't that be Kaiba acknowledging Joey as a duelist? Would it? Or would it simply just be a case of, he doesn't think Joey's up to snuff, so he's gonna let him enter his tournament so that he can be humbled by the actual greats. Think about that for a second. Right? Because in both sub and dub, Kaiba is both Seto and Kaiba are like, how the hell are you wearing one of my dual discs? Again, hinting at the fact that he fixed the results so that Joey wouldn't get in. And again, the better thing to do, in my opinion, and what would actually make the whole "he's actually a good person" argument actually hold some fucking water, is just let Joey in. And then when he's knocked out of the tournament, out of my hands. I gave him a shot. I wasn't a dick. I gave him a shot. His loss is on him. And that's why both Seto and Kaiba piss me off at the beginning of part 1. For Seto's part, it's him making light of the fact that Joey is on death's door. And that pisses me off. Because Seto Kaiba should not actually be fucking saying that shit. Especially if we're supposed to be redeeming this fucker. Which we are supposed to be after the next 3 episodes. Within the next 3 episodes. But as I said in the first draft of this video, yeah, no, he's not redeemed. Mokuba yells at him and then he pulls his head out of his ass. That's literally what's gonna fucking happen. Like, he's literally Seto is literally gonna say something to Joey. In the next 3-parter, I guess death is the only way to shut you up, or something like that. I don't know what the actual, I forget what the actual line is right now. I'm actually so angry at Seto, I am spitting right now. Ugh, spittle. Ugh, gross. My apologies. Ugh. So, yeah. So, yeah. So, I guess we gotta talk about why I find Seto to be so disagreeable in this episode and in this entire part of the arc. And it all and Kaiba actually sums it up perfectly what the problem was. Because what's funny is that some people claim that the conversation that Yugi and Kaiba have at the beginning of the dub is all about destiny and heart of the cards and all that stuff. No. No, 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 no. What they are actually talking about is Kaiba being a fucking asshole in both versions. In Now, granted, it's talking more about like both men are actually dissing Joey. As I said, Seto is making light of the fact that he's on death's door, and Kaiba is calling Joey being on death's door as Joey taking a nap, as Joey, as the gang trying to wake Joey from his nap. Excuse me. Let me get the quotes right here. The quoting right here. Yes, getting Joey waking up from his trying to wake Wheeler up from his nap, I believe, is the exact phrasing. Now, Atem in the dub, literally, and Dan Green does deliver the performance is actually pretty good in this episode in the dub, but that Atem is like, Joey is a great deal more danger than you fucking realize, Kaiba. He vowed to help me save the world. Harold, and that's why he's in that hospital bed right now. How? And then Kaiba turns around and says that Wheeler shouldn't have been in my tournament to begin with. And as far as I'm concerned, he got exactly what he deserved for butting into my tournament. A slap in the face by Raw. With Kaiba even going so far as to Kaiba specifically going so far as to say that if getting smacked down by an Egyptian god card or didn't knock any sense into that kid, then nothing will. Going so far as to call him a kid, even though they're not that far apart in ages, because need I remind you, Seto, you're still a fucking teenager too, asshole. And then, and then, and then. Then there's what Seto says, to shift back to the sub for a bit. Because Seto is no better. He basically says he was an excellent lab rat. I got to see Merrick's God card in action, and that's what the important part was. Oh, Joey being on death's door. Oh, worthy death. Wait, hang on. I thought you were acknowledging him as a duelist, Seto. I thought you literally said, Jinochi, I will accept you as a duelist, quietly to yourself. Does Yugi not get to know that? Does Yugi not get to have his best friend validated by you, his said best friend's biggest fucking critic? Moral man, my aching fucking ass. The only thing you care about is your brother, and even that's fucking questionable, given some of your dialogue, even in the sub in this fucking six-parter. At least in Mokuba's mind, more so. Because I'm sure he does still care about Mokuba quite a bit, as we saw at the beginning of the Alcatraz Island arc here. So I'm actually going to cover the Joey. So since the opening conversation is about Joey, I'm actually going to stick with Joey for the until I'm done, and then I'll start covering the duel, and then we'll get to the vision. And then we'll get to the vision. So, honestly, we don't really cut back to the gang all that often, thankfully, because again, every scene with the gang are all padding. Every cut back to the gang or to Ishizu, it's all padding. It's all fluff. We don't need it. Just like I don't need my webcam being dumb. Give me a moment. Sorry about that. But yeah, no, the entirety of the entirety of cutting back to the gang is just completely pointless. Leads to, which one was that? Part 3? I need to flip over to my sub notes for a second here. Yes, part 3. Even if part 3 has a better ending because there's less superfluous dialogue, right? Because in the dub, Ishizu has that pointless line, that stupid, pointlessly ominous line of the powers of ancient Egypt are beginning to reveal themselves, and I fear for us all. That is so stupid. That is such a dumb, unnecessary line. Which is funny because that actually leads that the vision is actually uh, better in the sub as well because of the silence, which is good. What's not so good is even Seto keeps bitching about burying the past, burying the past, burying the past, burying the past. Anger and hatred are my power. If that's the fuel of your power, then you don't have real power, Seto. I'm sorry. Trust me, anger can be useful. It can be motivating. It can be great when you channel it. But when all you have is hate and rage, ugh. Like, for the love of God, it's funny because this is actually why in the rewrite, if we ever get the Yu-Gi-Oh rewrite project off the ground, and I still want to do that. The Trek rewrite. I want the Trek rewrite, the Lore Runner, Lore Reloaded, and Jesse Gender to continue the Trek rewrite project, and I want to start the Yu-Gi-Oh rewrite project with my friends because I want to rewrite Yu-Gi-Oh and Seto Kaiba is effectively the reason why. I want him to stop being an asshole to Joey. I want a lot fucking sooner. I want this fucking I want this fucking he's a hate-filled dumbass as to completely die in a fire. Because yeah, him not caring about the world in either version is fucking bullshit. Especially considering the homicidal maniac that wants to blow up the world with the god cards that you know can do a lot of damage. Image makes you just as fucking dumb in the sub. Since, duh, the world is where you keep all your stuff, Seto. Ah, you know. Uh, but anyways, to get back to the gang, because I sidetracked back to Kaiba. Yeah, I'm gonna have a lot of bitching to do about. I'm gonna be bitching about both Seto and Kaiba in this, so please forgive me. So, uh, so Joey continues his dream of the past, past, blah 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 blah. Which is funny because a lot of, as I said, a lot of time is actually focused on the Coliseum clash more so than than that. And again, this is why I say you can't really trim it down completely. You would need at least 4 episodes, but I could easily shave off an entire episode. I could easily shave off an entire episode. Just get rid of the dream sequence, throw that out the window, slim down on how many times we cut back to the gang and how long we stay with the gang, and maybe kind of slim down the fucking turns a little bit instead of us sitting there. Now, what's funny is that Spell Sanctuary doesn't actually come into play as often as you might think, but I'll talk about that more when we get into the duel. It's actually kind of funny. Um. So then at the end of part 5, Joey starts waking up, and then at the beginning of part 6, Joey starts waking up and he's like, oh, hey, sorry guys. I guess I passed out. Oh, good thing I beat Merrick, right? Why are you guys looking so weird? I beat Merrick. I summoned Gearfried the Iron Knight. I kicked his ass. And then Serenity is like, no, Joey, listen. You managed to summon Gearfried, but right before you could call your attack, you collapsed. That means Merrick won the duel. And Joey's just like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. I still say he should have won that duel. Cool. I would have laughed. That would have been awesome if Merrick had been defeated by Joey, and it was actually instead of my in Serenity just kind of sitting there, or getting him to wake up. Imagine what that would feel like if instead of Tristan, well, okay, I guess if Tristan still drags him. Imagine if what it would feel like if instead of Honda, it was Mai that was holding him when he finally regained consciousness. How would that have felt? I imagine he'd blush profusely and then be like, and just like desperately like trying to act all cool. The real thing he's trying to do is hide his boner though, because he's got this massive boner. I mean, Mai is a beautiful woman. Let's be real, okay? And no, it's not grooming if a teenager gets an erection over a beautiful woman. That's not how that works. That is a natural. That is literally a natural reaction. Like literally, because it is a biological reaction. Like fuck, come on. And it's not as if Mai chose to forego her vest and wear just the corset. Or sit. No, that was for medical reasons that the vest was off. Yeah, I know. I'm just arguing semantics at this point, but anyways, I think that would have been pretty cool. So then they start arguing with Joey when he says, I gotta go and I gotta cheer Yugi on. Now, the doctor's concerns are not included in this, okay? The doctor's concerns are 100% legitimate, okay? I'm not even going to entertain the idea that the doctor's claims are invalid, because they're not. They're completely valid. But this was the point in my notes where oh wow. I actually didn't write down. I guess I screwed up, and I thought I had wrote something else down. Because in my sub notes, oh, it's because I. Oh, okay. it's because I said, "And Anzu shut the fuck up" twice specifically. Okay, that's why. Sorry. Anyways, but no, like both Taya and Anzu are dumb here, but Anzu more so than Taya, because at least with Taya, it's like. It, at least with Taya, it kind of makes a degree of sense because that's been her entire character, the entire Battle City arc, is worrying about her friends. Which, you know, I was kind of gonna bring up the whole unintended misogyny thing with Mai, but no, it actually pops up more with Anzu, doesn't it? She's literally a girl, and she's only there to cry and worry about her friends. That's it. To be weepy about her friends being in danger. Yeah. Anywho, so then Joey goes off, helps out. How Atem is fighting so that because of Joey's support and yada yada yada. But it's all good. It's all whatever. I shouldn't say good stuff because I don't think it's good stuff, but it's whatever. So let's rewind back to the beginning of the duel and just cover the duel now. So Kaiba begins with X Head Cannon. And this is where the XYZ monsters start to come into play, which is funny because they put them in the same league as the Magnet monsters. Except they're better than the Magnet monsters. And if you're wondering why, well, it's very simple. Because there's two things about the XYZ monsters. Sorry, give me a moment. Okay, sorry about that. Frickin' OBS issues. Where the hell was I? Right. So, the XYZ monsters, right? X Head Cannon, Y Dragon Head, and Z Metal Tank. These three are very cool and better than the Magnet Warriors areas because the Magnet Warriors require you to be holding Valkyrie and the Magnet Warrior to get out their strongest form, right? The XYZs, especially in the anime, just require you to sack. Just require you to combine them on the field. And what makes them even better than the other ones is they're not three vanillas. They're a vanilla and two union monsters. As this is effectively where we get introduced to union monsters. Now, union monsters are the monsters that effectively, when they're on the field, they become equip cards usually to a specific monster. They weren't exactly like super, super useful, but the XYZ monsters were probably the most famous because X Head Cannon had decent attack at 1800. Y Dragonhead actually had decent attack at 1500, and Z Metal Tank as well at 1500 as well. And it also helped that you can literally combine each one into different forms. Combine X and Y like Kaiba does in this duel, you get XY Dragon Cannon. You combine X and Z, you get XZ Tank Cannon. Combine Y and Z, and you get YZ Dragon Tank Dragon, I think. Future Alex, of course, is going to be putting these cards up on screen for you to see. Maybe because, of course, he is, because, that's kind of what I do with these videos. But anyways, and then of course the big combiner one is XYZ Dragon Cannon, which I always thought was just the coolest looking thing. And of course, because of Battle City rules, a fused monster like that counts as 3 sacrifices. Meaning that effectively what Kaiba is doing is not sacking his one XYZ Dragon Cannon, but what he's technically doing is sacrificing X, Y, and Z to summon Obelisk. The individual parts to summon Obelisk. It's a technicality, but actually I kind of find that interesting. Which, yes, means you could actually, theoretically, in Battle City, sack Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon in order to get Obelisk the Tormentor out in one turn. Think about that for a second. Battle City was nuts. Which is funny because that's something that has never happened before. Obviously, Kaiba has never done that before. And you might think, isn't that kind of a downgrade since Obelisk has less attack than Blue Eyes Ultimate? Well, it would if the anime god cards weren't, the anime god cards. I literally have a note later that just has me bringing up a clip from Hellsing Ultimate Abridged. The defending Lord of Dragon. Yeah, there's only one thing to say to that, and I'll just get the joke out of the way now.
Okay, I know it's filthy rich coming from me, but your powers are bullshit!
There you go. That was the pause for future Alex to chop out, and then stick the clip in there. So, which is funny because I do that a lot with. I've done this a couple of times with the videos. Hell, in what was that? Past is present. I actually put put a clip from Some Call Me Johnny on there. Great YouTube channel. I highly recommend him. Anyways, so yeah, the XYZ monsters, love them. They're not practical, but they are damn fun. Remember when Yu-Gi-Oh used to be fun and not just a make a board and negate and disallow your opponent from playing Yu-Gi-Oh? Good times. Good times. I fucking miss them, and and that's kind of why I want to go back to why I kind of want to go back to that with like only a few exceptions, right? But of course, that's what happens with most games. You get the filthy degenerates in there, and the game just gets ruined. So then Yugi uses Light Force Sword for some shenanigans after Kaiba tries to use Soul Exchange and Enemy Controller to try and get 3 monsters to just get Obelisk out in the second turn. I agree with Dubatem. Why are you in a rush, Kaiba? The game just started. Don't rush to the conclusion so soon. Hoon, Light Force Sword skewing Obelisk is that's Atem's stupid luck, given that since I know how Light Force Sword works. Although that's a spell version of Light Force Sword, so maybe not. I don't know. I still call it shenanigans. I literally wrote it down as shenanigans because it is. Let's be real. It only hits the correct target because plot convenience. Convenience specifically. Contrivance is when it makes no sense. Hence, just to define that real quick. Plot convenience is, oh well, that's convenient. Convenient. Plot contrivance is my camera going out of focus. Anywho, uh so yeah. Then then there's this brilliant play. Hey, Kaiba uses a card called Lullaby of Obedience, which is basically a superpowered form of Dark Designator, which we actually saw at the end of season 2. Dark Designator is put this card I know is in your deck in your hand. Lullaby of Obedience is if I can correctly identify a card in your deck, you hand it over. Over, right? And of course, since he's dueling Yugi specifically, of course he knows that Yugi as has Osiris the Heaven Dragon. I almost screwed that up. Holy crap. Oh, fun fact in my notes here, I actually wrote down Osiris every time every time. He was mentioned. I mentioned him specifically. Specifically, when summoned by Yugi first, summoned by Atem first, before Obelisk, and before Obelisk, and when it clears the static and allows Mokuba to broadcast the duel, uh, the Coliseum clash to Battle City proper, which is kind of funny. Oh, interesting. So I just looked it up, and Lullaby of Obedience in the real card game is actually more powerful, more costly, but it's more uh, more powerful as a result. So in the real card game, what happens is you actually pay 2,000 life points. I understand why that cost was removed because because he had to pay 1,000 life points for enemy controller after all. Oh, uh, and so you declare one monster, and the opponent looks through their deck, and if it's in their deck, like, hey, you basically apply one of these two effects. Either the person who activated this card or adds it to their hand, or you special summon the declared monster to their field in attack position. So ignoring the summoning conditions. So, like, let's say you wanted to. So, in the real card game, if, say, Kaiba wanted to fight Osiris instead of just adding Osiris to his hand, then he could. In the real card game, he could actually do that. He could actually force Yugi to summon out Osiris, right? Which is an interesting take on it, if I'm honest. Apparently in the anime, which was not mentioned in either version, by the way, you actually have to pay 1,000 life points. That's why he was at 2,000. Neither version explains that, by the way. Okay. Oh, apparently in the manga, if you're adding the card to your hand, and that's when you pay 1,000 life points. Huh. I mean, moot point on all of this because, duh, obviously Kaiba knows Osiris is in Yugi's deck, but. And yes, I'm keeping on saying that. I'm actually kind of. By the way, if I may toot my own horn briefly here, I'm actually very happy that I was stuck to my guns on that. Calling it Osiris and not Slifer. I always thought Slifer was a stupid. Okay, was a stupid name for a god card. Okay. I'm not trying to say that the person's name was dumb. No, the Slifer as a person's name is just their name. But a god card calling the Heaven Dragon Slifer, that was dumb. Um, for reasons I've already touched on. So, yeah, Lullaby of Obedience brings Osiris into. I almost screwed it up again. Brings Osiris into Kaiba's hand, but Atem was ready for that. Exchange, pick a card, hand over hand over Osiris. Osiris is in my hand now, thanks to you. No, which is much more of a reason for Kaiba to look pissed off than Seto, if you ask me. Also, I love how part one ends in the dub. I am a sucker for the cheesiness of the crowd suddenly turning on Kaiba, because remember in the dub, the crowd, the artificial crowd literally turns around because of the play that Yugi just did, and so the part one ends in the dub. As to be continued appears on the screen. Of the virtual crowd going Yugi, Yugi, Yugi. I just thought that was a nice little touch. That was a nice touch. I wish that was in the frickin'. I actually wish that was in the sub too. Oh, because that would just be awesome. The crowd has turned on you, Seto. You programmed them a little too well. So then we get into part two, and the first note I wrote down is actually because Merrick comes in to watch. He comments about saying that it's hopeless for. He says, "Oh, it's looking hopeless for the Pharaoh." And the thing is that this is like pretty early into part two. So I'm just looking at him like, okay, am I the only one who fucking who fucking understands this game? Seriously? More shenanigans with the thing. So I actually don't remember what I meant with this note of problem for Dawn of the Duel. Cool. Duel, so I'm just gonna skip over that. I've already talked about the XYZ monsters. So then Big Shield Gardna is destroyed. Wait, because Queen's Knight, which ignores Queen's Knight, which was a mistake, because in the anime, King's Knight, when it's normal or special summoned, like with, say, the trap card Soul Rope, for example, well, when you have. So Soul Rope activates, brings out King's Knight. And then, because Queen's Knight was sitting on the field the whole duel so far, or. Funny how that's come up on two separate occasions now. Anyways, so because Queen's Knight was sitting there, King's Knight comes out, and because King's and Queen's Knight, because Queen's Knight is on the field when King's Knight shows up, their son Jack's Knight shows up. No, I don't know if that's the actual card lore, and frankly, I don't care. Because I've always liked these three monsters, because I've always just thought they looked cool. They're not really anything special. Queen's Knight has 1500 attack. King's Knight has 1600 attack, and Jack's Knight is a level 5 with 1900 attack. Yeah, these guys aren't anything special. The only thing that's special about them is the ability to get 3 monsters on the field, which is better in the well, sorry, let me say that again, is better in the pre-Zexal anime because because like I said, normal or special, right? So there's that. Right. So then Yugi gets out Osiris, and Atem points out, your Egyptian god card only has 3,000 attack. And I love the look on Atem's face. I should definitely try and get a capture of that because it's just like, yeah, that's my face too, Atem. That's my face too. Like, what the fuck? Uh, who the fuck cares? So then Yugi is contemplating whether or not he should attack. He's like, nope, I can't hold back. Interdimensional matter transporter then saves XYZ Dragon Cannon, which apparently he clears the communication static that was preventing Mokuba from getting a rescue helicopter over here. Wait, that makes no sense. How the hell does the interference clear after Osiris blasts the sky? Shouldn't that be the other way around? Like they get a rescue copter, but then they lose access. What? That doesn't make any sense to me personally. Because again, it's like don't get me wrong, I like the idea that Osiris's power transcends solid vision and clears the static. It just weirds me out a little bit, you know. So then Mokuba gets through, who decides he's gonna go watch Seto's duel, and then sets it up so that Battle City can watch too. Who everybody's in awe, cool. And then this is when Obelisk shows up. Not gonna lie, I love of the visual effects when Kaiba is summoning Obelisk and laughing. That's cool. And I love like the way Obelisk descends, and you see like that image of it in the sky, and it's like, oh fuck, okay, here we go. I also like, by the way, I like that Atem is intimidated by Obelisk, because he should be. Yes, he's got his own Egyptian god card, but he's never fought Obelisk before. He's only seen it in action twice. No, sorry, 3 times. Now you might be like, well, he's seen it 3 times. It was Blue Wolf. Why the heck is it shocking to him, intimidating him? Oh, very simple. Seeing it in action when you're standing beside him, that's one thing. Facing it head on, that's another entirely. It's the difference between telling Blue Eyes Ultimate to destroy Hinokakasuchi and facing the Ultimate Dragon yourself. Because it's only when you're an arrogant brat named Noah Kaiba that you don't look at Ultimate Dragon and go, oh, fuck, it's Ultimate Dragon. So then there's some back and forth. Command Silencer basically is basically threatening Roar. Or then Yugi uses a combination of card destruction and disgraceful charity to throw 3 cards in the graveyard, draw 3 more cards, and then disgraceful charity literally adds cards to those cards that you discarded back to your hand, which gives, of course, gives Yugi 6 cards. Cool. Then Obelisk uses two random monsters, Sword of Soul and Blade Knight, to do his effect, which Karibo blocks. Okay. Okay. This is shenanigans, okay? This is straight shenanigans. And I'm not gonna sit here and lie. And I'm not gonna sit here and lie about it, right? But here's the thing. I'm actually okay with it for one simple reason. I can hand wave this. It's still dumb, but I do have a hand wave. And I want to stress it's a hand wave. Okay? If this bugs you, I get it. But my hand wave is that's still coming from a monster, therefore Karibo can technically still block it. Any damage from a monster is blocked by Karibo. It's a technicality, and I get it, but there it is. It's like with Wabaku, right? Nobody knew how the fuck Wabaku worked until it was fixed later. Same with Necro Valley. Until clarifications on what Necro Valley actually was supposed to do, who was brought forth, everybody was calling bullshit on a lot of what Necro Valley was doing. We hated Necro Valley in my high school duel in the high school dueling room. It was it was known as the resource room, but we might as well we basically just called it the dueling room because that's what it was. But anyways, uh, he, so yeah, Karibo blocks all that. Then Yugi uses necromancy to put 4 monsters on Seto's field, including Kaiser's Seahorse, which I'm assuming was discarded in one of the previous effects. It don't matter because, Osiris's second mouth. Summon light? Summoning light or something like that? Blasts the 4 monsters, and then the remaining monsters lose 600 points for each. 2,400. Now, in the Seto claims that this is Yugi mocking his monsters after he literally says, "How fucking dare you block Obelisk with that puny monster," insulting Karibo. I can't wait for Winged Karibo. That's gonna be awesome. When Winged Karibo literally fucking makes everybody look at Jane like, you're pathetic, and it's like, actually, Winged Karibo is pretty powerful. Wait, what? You know, transcendent wings. That's all I have to say about that. Winged Karibo level 9, or no, sorry, 10. Excuse me, Winged Karibo level 10. There's also a level 9 version, but I don't remember its effects, so please forgive me. So then, now in the dub, Kaiba says that necromancy was a cheap shot at his Egyptian god card. I'm just gonna say fuck this line and move on. So then the gods clash. The feedback causes explosions and damages screens in Domino City, which, wow, holy crap. And then that leads us into part 4. So we're shown visions of the past with apparently, Priest Seto having sided against the Pharaoh. I prefer the way it goes in the actual world of memories, but that's beside the point. And then both Seto and Kaiba start dismissing it because they're morons. And then they get back to the duel. So cloning is used when all Yugi can bring out is Gazelle, and then Kaiba activates Cost Down, the first time we've ever seen Cost Down, to lower the level of his blue eyes to 6. So all he has to do is sacrifice the clone. Some more shenanigans ensue. They get out Dark Magician to reenact the inherited duel. Magical Trick Mirror then brings out Monster Reborn so that Obelisk can block an attack for 1 turn. I've already made the joke about your powers are bullshit, so we're going to move on. Speaking of bullshit, after Flute of Summoning Dragons is used, whose Red Eyes is brought out, and that saves his attempt from defeat, even though that makes no fucking sense. And then, of course, this is in part 5 already. Eddie, I've actually skipped ahead because there's not much for me to say. This is the other problem, and yeah. So then Joey starts to wake up. We've already gone over, how all of that. Kaiba starts bitching about burying the past and yada yada yada. Honestly, the entirety of the dialogue in this episode just makes me lament the virtual world arc's placement all the more. Because again, one shift over to the other side. Because the only thing the virtual world arc has done has damaged the engines, and that's it. There's no reason for that. There's no reason for that. It doesn't add anything. It literally is just pathetic. And was not needed as the manga showed. But anyways. Mokuba also has a point of he wants to just erase everything, and it's like, fuck. So then Yugi uses double spell. Oh, no, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Final Attack Orders, the anime version, shows up. I actually showed this off with Defense Paralysis, but in the anime, it does the exact same thing that the real world version does, except then both players also have to choose 3 cards to act as their deck, and the rest go to the graveyard. So, they have to basically predict, all right, what 3 cards are they going to, so Yugi has to determine what 3 cards is Seto going to utilize against me, right? So then Double Spell allows Yugi to use Monster Reborn and Polymerization, which is not how that should work, but whatever. Dark Paladin shows up, which is actually personally one of my favorite fusion monsters of all time. Personally, I would love to have this. If I in the Yu-Gi-Oh rewrite, I may or may not actually want to do a at some point instead of Dark Flare Knight, Red Eyes Dark Dragoon. There's just something appealing about that idea. So then, Yugi splits up Blue Eyes Ultimate into 3 separate Blue Eyes. And because Kaiba is trying to bury his past, well, my final note for the sub just says it all. Kaiba uses hatred, and thus he's a slave to it. He doesn't want to be haunted by the past anymore. The problem is that to be not. The problem is in my blunt opinion, in order to not be haunted by the past anymore, you have to face the past. Which I know technically Seto did, but this arc pretends like he didn't, for starters, and in the manga, he really didn't. Yugi looks ahead to his duel with Merrick in the final duel against Merrick, and said, and Subatem is just like, I hope you use this to get over your darkness. Which is funny because technically he did. In the sub, anyway. And that's it. That's Clash in the Coliseum. I will go ahead and admit this was my best viewing. This was the best viewing I have had with Clash in the Coliseum ever. Best whatchamacallit. This was the best that I have ever had with this time I've ever had with this 6-parter. But it was definitely exhausting, and it did not need to be 6 episodes. I'm just going to go ahead and be blunt about that. I don't begrudge you if you love these 6 episodes, but this is not top tier dueling for me. What it is just irritating to me. My expression when I'm watching this is that a Tem image. That look on his face is just like, yeah. The internet fucking masturbates to this stupid episode, and I just sit here, and I'm sitting here flaccid as a damn noodle. That's it. That's Clash in the Coliseum, ladies and gentlemen. Next week is Battle for the Bronze. Don't be surprised if next week is a rant view, by the way. I mean, we'll see what the sub has to say about that, because I thought the same thing with Face Off, and Face Off was pulled out of rant view status, but I'm not looking forward to the next episode. Because, I mean, pointless fucking duel. Seto's has been an asshole since we got to Alcatraz's island. And he just lost to Yugi again. Yeah, because that's definitely a combination. That's definitely a good combination. Ugh. I'm going to go start compiling a list of the duels. I'm going to go ahead and start compiling a list of the duels. Duels for the ranking. And we will go ahead, and then I will go ahead and do that. So, yeah. I'm going to go get some other work done, and then later on I will go ahead and I'll start working on Battle for the Bronze, which will be a couple of days from my perspective, because yeah. Anywho, I'm gonna chop off Clash of the Coliseum, ladies and gentlemen. Direct all of your hatred for me not liking this episode, not giving it the S rank you think it deserves. There's down in the comments. I will see you guys next time. Blue Wolf Alex of the Lore Walkers signing out. Have a good one. Duel stand by.